We are sorry that the Inuit suffered so immensely, experiencing indignity, starvation, and death as a result of our actions.
Tonight, Canada apologizes to Inuit for what they endured with multiple forced relocations.
It taught you just to barely survive, but to never thrive.
Young adults come together for support as they build new lives on the other side of the foster care system.
It's an Indigenous perspective on Indigenous issues.
And another first for APTN as we prepare to deliver a one-of-a-kind national news service. Good evening, welcome to APTN National News. I'm Dennis Ward.
And I'm Melissa Ridgen. Members of the APTN Nation filed a lawsuit to settle a land claim they'd been negotiating without success for 40 years. And the move made Quebec legal history. Tom Fenario has the details.
Chief Christian Awashis drove 9 hours from Obidjwan First Nation to deliver a message to the province of Quebec. His people are tired of waiting.
40 ans de négociations qui ont mené à aucun projet de société jugé satisfaisant. Alors, à partir d'aujourd'hui, nous cessons toute négociation sur les négociations territoriales et nous amorçons une démarche de requête vers le titre.
Joined by elders and community members, Awashis kicked off a lawsuit in Quebec Superior Court demanding recognition of their ancestral land. The suit names both Quebec and Canada, who Awashis says have benefited greatly from Atikamekw lands.
100 ans de développement sur notre territoire, commencé par le barrage Boin, qui a été créé en 1918, 19, 20. Aucune compensation pour notre communauté. Développement forestier qui a fait de la prospérité du Québec. Aucun retour pour notre communauté.
There's a large discrepancy between how much land Obidjwan First Nation currently has versus what they say is their ancestral territory. Indigenous Affairs currently lists the reserve as 947 hectares. Obidjwan First Nation says their entire territory encompasses more than 2.6 million hectares. Located at the end of a 150-kilometer logging road in the Morrissey region of Quebec, Obidjwan's remoteness means they depend on their land for much of their sustenance.
Nous autres, vu que c'est dans cet endroit que nous vivons depuis qu'on est tout petit, toujours dans la forêt.
Nadir Andre is an Inuit lawyer who is representing Obidjwan First Nation. He says that the lawsuit is a calculated risk, one that he's confident he'll win after the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the Sikaltan people last year.
The situation with Sikaltan is very similar with Obidjwan. It's semi-remote community, semi-nomad community, and they still use the land, they still have elders, they have their language, their way of life, so they have what it takes to actually go and prove their title.
Andre expects the case to take years to settle. Awashis says a few more years of waiting will be worth settling the matter once and for all.
Nous sommes convaincus qu'on va avoir gain de cause dans notre affirmation là, de notre existence.
Tom Fenario, APTN National News, Montreal.
A longtime advocate for women's rights says she has an idea that may help reduce violence against Indigenous women and girls. And that is to talk to violent offenders in prison to find out why they act the way they do. APTN's Chris Stewart has the details.
Muriel Stanley Van knows about violence against Indigenous women. She was almost killed by her ex-husband, and she has been an advocate for many Indigenous women over the decades. Ven is a member of the National Aboriginal Advisory Committee and recently visited a prison in Quebec with Corrections Canada, which housed many Inuit prisoners. Ven proposed an idea to Corrections Canada. Why not find out firsthand the motives by talking one-on-one to convicted killers of Indigenous women? Ven says she was surprised the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls did not recommend this.
It seemed we were missing out on a very critical part of an inquiry into the deaths of the women. And so the idea that came to me was, and having learned from going to the prisons for many years, these prisoners are still human beings. Eventually they're going to get out, and they need to be prepared and healed to enter society.
She believes that psychiatrists, psychologists, and criminologists could gather useful information that can be used to reduce violence towards women by talking with violent criminals and treating them like a person.
The questions have to be meaningful, they have to be accurate, and they have to appeal to the prisoners who have done bad things. And we must look at that, and we have the capability to do that. This is a beautiful little seal, baby seal, that was carved by a prisoner in the Inuit jail, which was accepted with a lot of gratitude.
Venn believes that even the most hardened criminal can change, including killers.
That doesn't mean that they're not capable of turning themselves around. If they've turned into doing bad things, they can turn themselves into doing good things.
Venn says her suggestions were taken in good faith by Corrections Canada. She is hopeful her idea will be implemented. She wants to see Indigenous women no longer live in fear.
This young girl had tied around her neck, and it said, "Will I be next?" Meaning that if we don't take these measures to heal the people, we will continue to have the deaths of the women as the most traumatic and the most tragic as we go along. Am I next? It's an awful question for a young child to ask.
It's Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
Amazing but alarming how many.
University is hard for youth at the best of times, but what happens to young people navigating post-secondary world without supports? One woman found that youth aging out of the child welfare system were left on their own when it came to university, so she decided to change that. And as Brittany Hobson shows us, she created a community many can turn to.
Taking criminal justice too. I kind of want to be a badass and go into probation.
Twice a month, this group gathers at the University of Winnipeg. Each person with their own history, but they all share something in common. They've aged out of the child welfare system.
I wanted to connect with somebody who had experienced what I had been through.
Natasha Reimer is a creator of Foster Up, a peer support group for youth who have been in care. The 24-year-old spent her life bouncing around different group homes. When she reached university, she was finally able to shed the foster kid label she lived with.
No one in university knew that I was in care. No one, I was able to kind of just distance myself. I was just another face amongst a whole bunch of other faces. So it wasn't like in high school when your social worker drops you for school and you're sitting in the office and everyone's staring at you and everyone's like, is that her mom? They're like, no, that's her social worker. And oh, she's a foster kid.
As time went on, Reimer found there were other students like her. So she decided to create Foster Up. The group discusses challenges they face as well as opportunities available to them.
Basically what our goal is as Futures Forward is to assist people that have ever been in care with that transition to adulthood.
Heaven Geller is here for the second time. The 19-year-old was in care off and on until she was adopted at the age of 7. She says the group has given her a chance to speak about her experiences for the first time.
I wanted to explore what was actually happening, and I wanted to know about my biological side. I wanted to know that kind of stuff, and then when I did, it was a lot of hurt and a lot of trauma, so I just decided to keep it inside and to come and talk with these guys and hear them. It's like you're not alone, and so to really open up with everyone and hear everyone else's stories, it's kind of reassuring.
The group encourages each other and celebrates everyone's successes. Reimer says this is something the system doesn't do.
It taught you just to barely survive, but to never thrive. For a lot of kids in care, I feel like that's the message that they're hearing. They're growing up hearing that their aspirations, that their dreams. No one asks you what you want to be when you grow up when you're in care. No, because that's not a reality for you.
There's a stigma attached with being a kid in care, and Geller hopes people will see beyond this.
We're not all bad people, and I think there's a stereotype that CFS is the kids there are troubled kids and bad and into drugs and alcohol, and unfortunately some of it is true. However, we have to see where this is stemming from.
Reimer is headed to law school later this year, but she says her biggest success has been fostering a new family.
I've learned about this whole community of kids in care that exists, like, that were walking among me for all these years, and I'm just so happy that we're all kind of together.
Brittany Hobson, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
The federal government has issued another apology today. More on that after the break.
But first, here's a look at Wednesday's weather forecast. Starting on the east coast, -2 for Halifax and St. John's, -7 in Fredericton, -16 for Happy Valley Goose Bay, 21 below in Nain. 0 with snow for Montreal, -8 in Saguenay, -10 in Chibougamau, +3 for London and Peterborough, +4 with snow for Toronto, -8 and snow in Thunder Bay, -9 in Wawa. In northern Manitoba, 21 below for Puckatawagan and Thompson, -18 for God's Lake, -14 for Gimli and Winnipeg, 15 below in Princess Harbor. -1 for Swift Current, -4 under sunny skies in Regina, -8 in Meadow Lake, -22 for Stony Rapids. Welcome back. Today, the Ahiarmiut received their apology for being relocated several times in the late 1940s and 50s. The Inuit group has already received a $5 million settlement, but today, Indigenous Relations Minister Carolyn Bennett was there to apologize in person. In 1949, the Ahiarmiut were relocated from their home at Enenday Lake to Neolton Lake because the Canadian Armed Forces had set up a radio station at Enenday Lake. They returned on their own and were relocated again, this time to Hennick Lake. By 1960, they had all been moved to Arviette. When they left, there were 80 people. More than half of them had died.
We are sorry that we moved the Ahiarmiut from Enenday Lake. We are sorry that the Ahiarmiut suffered so immensely, experiencing indignity, starvation, and death as a result of our actions. We are sorry that you were not treated with the kindness, respect, and humanity that you deserved.
Since the 1980s, David Surkyuk has led the charge to receive this apology and compensation. He lived through those relocations, formed a group to get compensation, and today received his apology. We reached him by phone at his home in Arviette.
Last 2 days, I was kind of nervous. I was fairly good, but a few times I have a tear here and there. The magical part of it for me is at the beginning when my brother, who has a very poor health, did the opening drum dance using my late father's song.
There's been a train derailment in Saskatchewan. Emergency crews are on the scene of the train crash near Saskatoon. One woman who witnessed it says she couldn't believe what she was seeing.
And it was kicking up some snow, and I thought, gosh, that thing's going to tip. And I can't believe I'm seeing this. And then, sure enough, it slowly tips over. Of course, the next one, you know, 3 or 4 just tip over, but then they're just piling into each other, and it's just like straight out of a movie.
Highway 11 just north of the city is still blocked in both directions, and traffic is being rerouted. The RCMP says the CN train was carrying grain and caught fire due to a possible diesel leak.
The death toll from a pipeline explosion in central Mexico is now risen to 93. Another 46 people who were severely burned are still being treated in hospital. The blast happened last Friday in Hidalgo State. About 800 people were collecting gasoline gushing from a pipeline leak when the explosion went off. Central Mexico had been hard hit by gasoline shortages after a crackdown on fuel theft nearly a month ago.
The third annual Ottawa Women's March was held on the weekend. This year's theme was about ending violence against women. Several hundred people gathered on Parliament Hill and braved one of the coldest days of the year. Because of this year's theme, the event was led by the Native Women's Association of Canada and by Indigenous drummers and singers. One of the key speakers was Bridget Tolley. Environment Minister Catherine McKenna attended but didn't speak. After the speeches on the Hill, the crowd walked 4 kilometers to Lansdowne Park.
And all this violence is still happening, even today. We want real accountability from the police and the government, and we want real changes. This year we are outside, but next year we might need to be inside. We have the right to safety, agency, and dignity in our own lands. No more apologies, only changed behavior.
Coming up this summer, APTN is expanding into the French news market. Sophie Claude Miller will be the host producer of the news based in Montreal, Quebec. She joined me in studio earlier today to chat about what's on tap. Okay, you're sitting in my co-host Dennis Ward's seat. You're soon going to have your own host seat. Tell us about this summer. APTN is going to have their own French newscast out of Montreal. Tell us a little bit about it.
I'm really excited to join the APTN team, but especially to deliver the very first Francophone newscast of APTN. It's a very exciting challenge, and basically we want to cover stories from throughout Canada at the national level, but there's going to be a specific focus on the Francophone communities throughout Canada as well. So we'll be able to exchange some stories and be in touch with what the people want to hear more about as well.
I love this. So what community are you from?
I'm a Cree from West Waunipee in James Bay, which is about a 10 hours drive from Montreal to situate you.
But why would you leave Montreal? It's a beautiful city. I understand going home is also, yes, your heart is in both places, I'm sure. So what's been your professional journey up to get to APTN?
Basically, in '99, I started working as a counselor, working with the Indigenous community in the urban setting of Montreal. Mm-hmm. And then afterwards, in 2005, I went back to my community and got in touch with the people of my community itself. But I did, in all those years, a lot of counseling with people who are struggling, let's say the homeless population of Montreal, and then some clients that go into shelters, the Native Women's Shelter of Montreal, but also in Chibougamau and la Maison La Croirelle as well. And also I worked as a communications specialist. I did coordinate various projects, so I love the storytelling, really. I did an internship last year at Radio-Canada's Espace Autochtone, and I've learned a lot of things, and it really showed me that it was a true calling for me to do storytelling in a news form. So when I saw there was an opportunity here, I couldn't let that go. It was really the dream opportunity for me.
And what is it that made you want to make the jump to APTN? Do you want to just come and tell stories here, but why specifically APTN?
I like that it's an Indigenous perspective on Indigenous issues. I think it brings a little flavor to it that is different than what we see in mainstream media, and that really is in touch with my values as well.
I love this. Well, Sophie Claude, thank you so much for popping in to visit us and let us know about this, what's coming up. APTN this summer, Francophone News. We will, of course, have much more coverage as this gets set to launch. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you, Melissa.
It was nice to have her pop by today.
Absolutely. Looking forward to that additional newscast that we'll be having.
Absolutely. Okay, well, it's time for us to take another quick break, but stick around. We still have more news to come.
But first, here's the rest of Wednesday's weather forecast. Picking back up in northern Alberta, -9 in Peace River, +1 in Grand Prairie, +2 for Medicine Hat and Calgary, 0 in sunny skies in Lethbridge, 7 above for Victoria, rain, and +5 for Vancouver and Campbell River, -15 in Fort Nelson, +1 with snow for Smithers. minus 25 in Mayo, 31 below for Old Crow. In the NWT, minus 13 in Fort Liard and Trout Lake, minus 29 in Norman Wells, 32 below for Sax Harbor and Tuktoyaktuk, minus 28 in Paulatuk, minus 36 for Baker Lake and Chesterfield, 44 below in Repulse Bay, minus 40 in Igloolik, minus 32 in Resolute.
Welcome back. The countdown is officially on to Hollywood's biggest night. Nominees for the 91st Annual Academy Awards were announced this morning in Beverly Hills. Netflix black and white Mexican epic Roma and 18th century comedy drama The Favorite collected the most nominations with 10 apiece.
We are at war. We won. Oh, it is not over. We must continue.
And several Canadians landed Oscar nominations of their own today. Pixar production Bo by Toronto-raised Domi Shi was nominated for Best Animated Short. Also on that list is Weekends by Canadian-born director Trevor Jimenez, and Animal Behavior by Vancouver's David Fine and Alison Snowden. The pair won an Oscar back in 1995, but they say the excitement and nerves really go away. Never really go away.
You know, you've got to go on stage in front of all those celebrities. Billion people watching.
And I think the nomination is so nerve-wracking in particular because, you know, we don't know if we'll win. The other films are all very good as well. But if you're nominated, you get to go. You get to go on this ride of being a nominee and going to the event itself. And so that's really exciting.
Other Canadians up for an Oscar this year include sound mixer Paul Massey for Bohemian Rhapsody and set decorator Gordon Sim for Mary Poppins Returns. Exciting stuff, but not quite as exciting as what APTN has next for you, and that's the return of the Laughing Drum with Tim Fontaine. That's just minutes away.
And be sure to join us live tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Time as we put the child welfare system in focus. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Have a great night.
And I'm Dennis Ward. Good night. We'll see you back here tomorrow.